meeting to order?
Oh, because we're electing officers.
Oh, I apologize.
So
Thank you, Superintendent Chavez.
No, you're fine. Sorry, we should have talked ahead of time. So I just want to make a public announcement before we actually officially begin the meeting. Tonight is the night that we're electing officers, so I'll be opening the meeting per policy and the rules of order. And then we'll do the election of the president, and then the president will then take over the meeting after that. I also want to remind the people on YouTube watching that we have closed the comment section as we had been announcing since October, and ask that if you have comments or anything that you please use the board comments at demingps.org as we've done as we've been announcing and publishing. So I just wanted the public that's watching to know that that was the case. So at this time, I'll call the meeting to order.
Thank you, Ms. Chavez.
And I will do a roll call of the members. So Ms. Paez? Present. Mr. Kroll?
Present.
Ms. Hernandez?
Present.
Ms. Cameron?
Present.
And Mr. Orozco? I see his name. Are you present, Mr. Orozco?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, I'm here. I'm on the road traveling.
Try again.
Mr. Orozco, are you present? You can type it in the chat if you're able to.
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me?
At this time, we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico, the symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures. And at this time, we will proceed with the election of officers. We will start with the president. Is there a nomination for president?
Mrs. Chavez, Superintendent, I would like to nominate Amy Hernandez for president.
Okay, thank you.
I would
Mrs.
like.
Cameron?
I would like to second.
There are no seconds
Okay.
needed in nominations. Are there any other nominations? We'll go ahead and close nominations. And while there's only one official nominee, we will go ahead and take a roll call vote to confirm the nomination. Mrs. Paez?
Yes.
Mr. Kroll?
Yes.
Mrs. Cameron?
Yes.
Mr. Orozco? He's traveling, so he's having a hard time. And Ms. Hernandez?
Yes, thank you.
So at this time, I will turn it over to President Hernandez to finish the elections of the office.
Well, I have to say, I appreciated you opening the meeting. I like that. Okay, and so then we'll move on to the officer of vice president. Are there any nominations?
Mrs. President, I make a nomination. I would like to nominate Mrs. Cameron.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? Okay, with that, we'll go down the roll call. Ms. Paez?
Yes.
Mr. Kroll?
Yes.
Mr. Orozco?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, he's traveling.
We still have a quorum.
Ms. Cameron?
Yes.
Amy Hernandez, yes. And I probably should have let you do that.
I'm not the
Oh, no, not yet.
secretary.
Yeah, boy, y'all are throwing me for a loop today. Okay. Okay, and then so we'll move on to the office of secretary. Are there any nominations?
I nominate Daniel Crow for secretary.
Okay, are there any other nominations? Okay, with that, we'll do the roll call. So Ms. Paez,
Yes.
Mr. Kroll,
Can it be last?
you can be last, but it won't matter. Mr. Orozco, Ms. Cameron,
Yes.
Amy Cameron,
Yes.
Yes.
Amy.
Mr. Cole.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
All right.
And so with that, we are then have completed the election of officers. So we'll move on to the approval of the agenda. Are there any proposed changes to the agenda?
The only changes we have are the standing reports from the student council and the NEA. There are illnesses amongst everyone and neither will be present tonight.
It's too bad.
I know. Well, we're sorry to hear that, but given the state of our community and world, I understand that. Are there any other proposed changes to the agenda? Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the agenda with the, what do you say, removal of the
Standing reports.
standing reports.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Okay. And now, Mr. Cole, you get to do the roll call.
Yes, ma'am. Mrs. Paez,
Yes.
Mrs. Cameron,
Yes.
Mr. Orozco. There's a delay, huh?
Yeah.
Mrs. Hernandez.
Yes, if you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you.
I apologize.
Oh, Mr. Hernandez. Hernandez, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Uh,
What a night. Huh?
What a night,
Okay. With that, we'll move to the consent agenda. There,
Madam Chair, I move approval of the consent agenda as printed.
is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. Cole?
Yes, ma'am. Mrs. Paez,
Yes.
Mrs. Cameron,
Yes.
Mr. Orozco,
Yes,
Mrs. Hernandez.
Yes.
Mr. Crow, yes.
And so as part of the Deming Public Schools accountability procedures and as recommended by the state auditor, 3 bills were randomly selected and audited by the board. The board also reviewed a monthly report of activity funds. All procedures met state and district regulations. Okay, now we move on to our action items and I'll turn it over to Superintendent Chavez.
Thank you, President Hernandez, members of the board. The first action item is approval for speech language therapy services. And we have Miss Beth Boggs here to answer questions and provide more information. You're close enough.
Madam President, members of the board, you have before you the documentation. It is actually bilingual speech language therapy services. I know it doesn't say that, but that's what the proposal was that went out. And we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 companies respond. I do want to point out that all of our responses were virtual. We have no vendors able to provide in person. That's not my first choice, but that's what we're dealing with in COVID world. So we had no choice but to select a vendor that has a virtual SLP. So you can see on the score sheet where it says total across there. The way this is done, if you're not familiar, we send out the RFP and then we score that based on their, did they provide the information we requested? And then they're given a score. You see on the far left, the points, that's the total number that possibly could get. And then if you go across to see how many they did get. The only thing that sometimes throws people is the price. They get 30 points for the price. And so we take whatever hourly rate that they did, and the lowest vendor is on top, and we take their price on the bottom, and then multiply by 30. So it gives a factor to give them the percentage of points. That's why you see, like, we kind of got crazy with the decimal points here. That's why you get weird decimal points, because we're dividing it. So the highest score on the proposal was LSG at 63.74. And so the recommendation is that we award the contract to this company. We have not worked with them before. So hopefully it will go well. Any questions?
Quick question. If it doesn't work well, then we go to the second highest
Yes,
or
sir.
the highest points?
We can. The difficulty with that, I don't know if you see, the next one is present. The challenge with that at the bottom is they also added $100 fee per student on top of the hourly rate. So I can't, it's not really a true calculation of their hourly rate because there's more stuff. There were two companies who did that. And it's really difficult to calculate. So hopefully we won't go that route because I don't know how we're going to do that. But that's what the way they wrote the proposal. But yes, we can go to the next vendor. Or we can send it out again if we wish.
Yeah. Understood.
Any other questions? So we do recommend that you approve this RFP for bilingual speech and language therapy services.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. Cole?
Yes, ma'am. Mrs. Paez,
Yes.
Mrs. Cameron,
Yes.
Mr. Orozco,
Yes.
Mr. Orozco,
Yes.
Mrs. Hernandez,
Yes.
Mr. Crow, yes.
And with that, we'll move to item action B.
Madam President, members of the board, item action B is a number of bars budget adjustment requests, and we have Ms. Doyle on Zoom to review them and answer any questions that you might have.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board. The first bar that you do have before you is a big one, lots of pages here. But this one is, we're finally bringing to you for approval the budget for our ARP funds. This has been a process, I will say, but we've gotten lots of feedback and, spent a lot of time trying to be really intentional about how we're going to spend these funds. So I am asking for your approval. I know that Superintendent Chavez has talked to you about the application, and this budget does follow the application as Superintendent Chavez has presented it. The second bar that we have is some additional funding for our homeless McKinney-Vento students. Mr. Chavez is not here to speak to us. I'm going to highlight a couple of things, and then if there's any additional questions, we can get with him when he's available. The first thing I'd like to bring to your attention is that we do have approval to get a vehicle for our equity department for our homeless students, which I know that he's really excited about. We also are looking to do some upgrades for the clothing bank. We're going to try and get some HVAC units in there, which I know are sorely needed, as well as a washer and dryer. So those are kind of some highlights there. There's also an MOU that we are looking to do, and I'm sure will be coming before you for Camino de Colores. Is that right, Ms. Chavez?
United, you need it, yeah.
Yes. I'm sorry, I apologize for that. So those are the highlights of that additional funding that we will be receiving. I worked with Mr. Chavez on that. The third bar is just our final allocation for CARES, not very much. It's an additional 2,000 or so that has already been spent on sanitation supplies. So I'm just asking for your approval there. Yeah. And then we do number 4 and 5, actually, I believe. Yes, 4 and 5 are the same thing. So this is a couple of things that I'm doing here. So, we did do a lot of incentives, and so I'm covering the where we spent for the incentives, but we are also looking to move some custodial salaries to this fund and to utilize this funding specifically for that. So you'll see that there's a maintenance bar and a transfer bar that I'm doing there, both for the same fund. And then, let me see, family income index, it's just moving it within the same function. It's a maintenance bar. We're just moving the FTE from a social worker to a student success liaison. So it's really just a job class change there. And then finally, Title I, Red Mountain has requested us to move some funds so they can purchase some software and intervention, software, IXL and intervention software. And with that, I will stand for any questions you might have.
Ms. Doyle, on the McKinney-Vento one, is the vehicle, is that to transport students to and from school who are homeless?
Excuse me, I believe it could be for that, but also any other, it wouldn't be exclusively to and from. Anytime that it would be needed.
So, Madam President, members of the board, the current vehicles that they have are very old, first of all. But there's also with COVID now this requirement for bigger, we have to use Suburbans to transport kids. And so in order to space them out,
Okay, okay.
and the vehicles are very old.
Yes, yes.
I think Ms. Paez could attest to that, right?
Oh, yes. So is the vehicle that they're purchasing, is that a Suburban?
That was the plan, I believe, was that size at
Okay.
least. Mhm.
I believe that's the quote that they received, yes.
A Suburban is a good idea also because you can carry
Supplies and
gas
things.
supplies and just
Absolutely.
all kinds of things.
And that was probably the Suburban that we drove up to Santa Fe and Albuquerque in as well.
Well, right now they don't have a Suburban. They're using Escapes. They have
Oh.
older Escapes, and so
Oh,
those are
really?
too small
Yeah.
to
They-
transport kids anymore.
They always were.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions or comments about any of the bars? Ms. Paez, did you say you had a question?
I had one and then I don't remember now.
Oh,
so
we can
it's
give you
fine.
a minute. That's
No,
okay.
it's okay. If I think of it, I'll come back. But there was something I was gonna ask, but I don't remember what. It's fine.
Is there a motion then?
Also move acceptance of the approval of the budget adjustment request as presented to us.
Is there a second?
I second.
Mr. Cole, do the roll call?
Yes, ma'am. Mrs. Paez,
Yes.
Mrs. Cameron,
Yes,
Mr. Orozco,
Yes.
Mrs. Hernandez,
Yes.
Mr. Kroll, yes.
Okay. And with that, speaking of vehicles, we'll move to the approval of the DPS vehicle disposal list. Superintendent Chavez.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. As we presented last semester, several items we needed to purchase in the history, the age of our vehicles. We are now at a place where we're disposing of some of those vehicles that we have replaced. And so we have Mr. Milo as well as Mr. Wertz is on the Zoom to answer any questions. We have three vehicles and there's three pickups on this one, and there is a Bluebird bus that has been being replaced, as well as Impala's pickups. That's mostly just for the public to know the vehicles that are being disposed of. But Mr. Milo, do you have anything else to add?
No, there was George, Mr. Work sent one other list, and which included a John Deere tractor. I don't know if you're seeing that.
Yes, we have that
Yes,
list as well.
thank
Thank you.
wouldn't that be considered an antique now?
The bus has met its 20-year
Wow.
cycle.
So we're not hanging on to them as we're replacing them, and they're pretty old. So we ask for your approval to dispose of these vehicles.
How are we going to dispose them online or?
Auction.
Oh.
Mr. Milo, would you like to describe that process?
Yeah, so what I do is I build profiles for each of the vehicles, which includes pictures, a description of the vehicle, how they're going to be available through public auction surplus, and then once I get notified by finance, then I just click a button and they post. They're up for auction for 7 days. There's no minimum bid on them. So usually bids start out like at $100 and they just go up from there. Is how it works. And so top bidders at the close of the bid cycle, they're the winners, and then they pay online, and then I make arrangements for them to come pick up. pretty easy.
Are all the vehicles running and stuff or no?
Not all of them are running.
Oh, I see.
One definitely does not run. Everything else, they can either be jump started and get them out of the yard. But one will have to be towed, it just doesn't run at all.
Are there any other questions?
Just out of curiosity, what is an average amount that you usually get for a vehicle that's running?
Anywhere between 500 and 3,500 for a vehicle. Sometimes people pay way over Blue Book. Most of these vehicles aren't even on the Kelly Blue Book anymore.
Thank you.
I see, Mr. Wertz, you're on Zoom. Did you have anything else you want to add?
No, I think it's all been covered. I mean, these vehicles, some of them, the ones we're disposing of, I think 2 of them runs and 1 doesn't, but they're all past their life and they're more expensive to keep running at this point than to hold on to.
Thank you.
Makes sense. Okay, and with that, is there a motion?
I make a motion that we approve the DPS vehicle disposal list.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. Crowe, if you'll do the roll call?
Yes, ma'am. Mrs. Paez,
Yes.
Mrs. Cameron,
Yes.
Mr. Orozco,
Yes.
Mrs. Hernandez,
Yes.
Mr. Crowe, yes.
Okay. So that concludes our action items for tonight. We'll move on to the superintendent report.
So first of all, I'd just like to say that this is Mr. Charles Turner's first night as taking over a board meeting. And we made it easy on him because our action items are done. We don't have a closed session and we're going to move through pretty quickly. So next month, let's see if we can do something a little bit harder.
Bring a snack.
Right.
So tonight,
Here's the mix.
Madam President, members of the board, we do have some policies that our policy committee came together on to review and adjust based on some legal language as well as some revisions to simplify the language too. So the first policy that we bring before the board for the first reading is policy number 245, travel per diem and mileage payments. And the language was just simplified to align and not kind of paint us in a corner. It was a little jumbled before, and now we've put it exactly the way the Travel and Per Diem Act is. So there's a revision there. And I don't know if you want me to, I won't read all the revisions. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at those. This one's a pretty short one though.
Yeah.
Are there any questions on the travel one? Concerns? Okay. The next one that we're going to look at is policy number 370. It's medication in the schools. This was pretty big change because there were some laws and legislation that came through regarding students being able to carry and self-administer if they have doctor's notes and that sort of thing. So we worked with the attorney and with our healthcare coordinator to clean this one up also to align with the law, as well as what our nurses and our health services people can be responsible for under their licenses and that sort of thing. So this one was a little bit longer. However, it does align with the law as it's written.
Madam Chair, Superintendent, just for on line 38 of page 3, if we could change in 38 for over-the-counter medications, the parent guardian must should be annually.
Mhm.
Got it.
I'm sorry, I was a first grade teacher.
It's okay. We need that.
Yes.
Now, that's a pretty big word for me. so.
Any other revisions that you saw on this one?
We're still on this page.
Yeah, we're still on medication.
Yes, and I'm sorry I didn't get this to you before.
No, you're fine.
And then on page Well, this is probably something we don't want to debate. So I
Okay.
don't know on 41 whether principal needs to be capitalized or not. So that's something you can
Okay.
decide later. That was, I think. Oh, and on page 8, students are allowed to self-carry and use equipment and supplies for storage. I don't believe we need the comma top
Okay.
line, so that's just a,
Okay.
and I think that's, I apologize.
Just some grammar.
Yeah, just some
Okay.
grammar.
Does anybody have any questions? Is the content? Any questions on the content? Right, then the third policy that we're looking at is the use of computers, and Mr. Glickler has worked on that one and provided a lot of feedback again to align it with some of the laws, the federal laws, as well as clean it up in this age of COVID with use of computers. You can see what was struck out in red and what was added in green, and we would be happy to answer any questions or concerns that you might have. I think those of us on the policy committee, we're totally fine with it, right?
Right. We did spend quite a bit of time
We
on
did
it.
spend quite a bit of time, but we want to make sure that Mr. Kroll and Ms. Fayez have an opportunity to, okay,
Absolutely.
Yeah. Very good.
okay. So then the last policy that is our first read tonight is the expense reimbursement, policy number 522, expense reimbursements. And this policy, again, was cleaned up with language and authorized the superintendent to approve private vehicle mileage. It took out things like 32 cents a mile because that's more of a procedure based on the law. And so we just wanted to make it more like a policy than a process or procedure. Be happy to answer any questions with that one as well. Okay, so that was our first read of those policies. So Madam Chair, members of the board, will go on to item B, which is the connectivity report. And Mr. Glickler has some more information for you regarding that.
Thank you, Superintendent Chavez. President Hernandez, members of the board, Superintendent Chavez, I'd like to talk to you a little bit today about the state of our connectivity, where we have come from and where we are hopefully going. This is based a little bit on your last meeting when there were some questions about what kind of hotspots we're able to provide. This is a much more expanded conversation though. Our overview is that we have really 3 categories that we need to look at when we're looking at connectivity for our students and staff. The first is whether or not they have a device that is sufficient to do the work that they need to do. The second is when they're sitting in our buildings, whether they have enough connectivity to do the things they need to do. And the third is when they're home and they're needing to do something, that they also have the connectivity that they need. I want to tell you what our current state is and then explain how we got there. Currently, when it comes to laptops, we have enough laptops, new laptops, for all of our teachers plus and all of our students to have a device that they can take home with them if necessary on a one-to-one basis to do education and on both sides of education, learning and teaching. We also have enough extra laptops on top of that, but we're able to deploy them for roles like counselors and like nurses and SROs and so forth. Those were all acquired during the pandemic. We also have, when it comes to inside the buildings, an internet that we've upgraded some of the infrastructure with, and we are in the progress of upgrading some of the connectivity, some of the speed. And third, when people are going home, we do have enough hotspots that every family that needs one and can use one, in other words, can they get Verizon where they live, can get one if they wish. As far as how we got to this place and where we're going next, when it comes to computers, when the pandemic started, we very quickly realized, of course, as a district, that people were going to be remote for more than just a couple of weeks. At that point, the district maintained and still maintains a one-to-one program for the high schools, for Early College High School, Deming High School, and Members Valley High School, which amounted to about 1,500 laptops, which would not be enough for a little over 5,000 students. We also had iPads that were being used for pre-K. There were additionally other laptops in the district. Many were old, I think that anyone who is a principal here who's had to have laptop labs in their classrooms know the laptops that we were using in the beginning of 2020 for labs were frequently old, and they were sometimes retired laptops that had expired out of their warranty from the high school, but we were trying to get some additional use from them. These were devices that we use on an emergency basis just to give people something. So they had something that they could maybe use, even if it wasn't the best device, even if it was no longer truly suitable for education because it was an aging device. Once it became clear that the pandemic was going to be going on longer, we began trying to acquire new laptops so that everybody could get a one-to-one device. And even though we were ahead of the curve in terms of making that request, and we had a lot of devices that were going to be coming in early, our order was unfortunately canceled by Lenovo. A combination of tariffs and computer parts being produced in companies that were not following ethical labor practices resulted in those being canceled, and we had to pretty nimbly switch to the current Dells that we use. We had just ordered teacher Dells. They are the 5410s, and they cost a little over $600, sorry, a little under $700, $699. And we ordered 420 of those, and they came in very quickly, and they're a robust device. They're a medium high-end workhorse that can be used for teachers to do anything that they need to do. And they're new. They're newer than any of the laptops we had in the district at the time. Dell proved to be equally nimble in being able to get us fairly fast another order for laptops, and that's where the 3410s came from. We were able to order 3,286 of those for student use. Those cost a little over $600, so less than the teacher wants. And they are kind of a fun device because they're a good computer. They were also not the computer that we were looking for student use. They're not designed for that purpose. We did get them fully warranted, but the warranty is not as strong as the Lenovo one that we have at the high school. They're a larger screen. They're a bigger device for first graders, second graders to carry. And they're not really designed to be carried from classroom to classroom or taken home. They're designed for staff members to use on their desks and put somewhere safe and take with them. So these things, they kind of break a lot and we do a lot of work repairing them. I want to give a shout out to my own team, if I may, for the unboxing process there. We frequently every year do an all hands on deck moment where we order 400-ish laptops for the high school one-to-one program, and all the LSTs around the district plus central technology, we get together to unbox them all and get them all imaged. And that's everybody's getting involved to do that. This order was 10 times that size. And so we had to have everybody come together and get a lot of paper cuts on our hands, pulling computers out of boxes. It's some of the most manual IT work that I've gotten the privilege of being able to do. And it was a lot, and they got it done very, very quickly. We got them imaged very quickly so that they could be deployed. Secondly, the deployment was not easy either. Usually when we deploy a computer, it is done at a one-to-one basis from the high school. This was district-wide. This required every principal to come up with a plan to have computers handed out to families in a way that was safe when everyone was concerned about gathering of crowds, people coming into the schools, and they pulled it off. They were able to get those to people. So at this point, everyone who is first grade and up has a device in their hands that they can use that is a new, good computer. Those were higher end than we intended to get because that's all we could find at the time. And first graders were able to take our existing Lenovo's that the schools had ordered the year before. So they're between those old ones I described earlier and the new ones we just ordered, and make them available for kindergartners. Last pre-K, under the work of Don Maria over there, we're able to order enough iPads that we can deploy those to pre-K students. So everybody has a device by this point. We're able to continue to maintain those devices, by the way. It has been a little bit of a challenge. When it comes to our Lenovo computers at the high school, you can knock it off your table over and over again, and Lenovo will continue, unless you're intentionally sabotaging it, to honor their warranty and repair it. When it comes to the Dells, it's a once-a-year situation. So once a year, they'll fix anything that goes wrong with it. They'll even replace the whole device. But if it happens a second time, we can't use the warranty. We did, however, set up a self-maintainer program. So the techs all around the district can fix those themselves. And we did some analysis and determined that the most common breakage was because these cords would get yanked out and they would break the charging port, which is, it turns out, a $3 part. So it's far cheaper for us to avoid those parts than to use the warranty. So we just did that. And then we have people that just, that's what they do. They fix charging ports when kids break them. And it means that we can get a lot more work out of that point. We also did some work with the iPads. One of the challenges we've had in the past in the district is iPads are ordered on an ad hoc basis and they're not really maintained. What we did is we found an MDM program, a mobile device management program, that lets us maintain those iPads, push software out to them rather than having to touch them all individually, and more easily control them. And that made the process of supporting those iPads a lot easier. We now have one technician who specializes in that, and when we need new software, they can click a few buttons and it pushes them out to the iPads that are governed by that program, which is, I think at this point, a little over 400 iPads that are in that program. That gets us to where we are with computers. When it comes to inside the buildings on connectivity, things have been a little slower, and we have a few things that are in work that we're hoping to get done sometime in the next few months. What we have accomplished is that we have 1 gig of connectivity that the district has that we can share amongst all of our buildings. Time was that was enough, but it is not anymore. We're doing more with video, we're doing more with YouTube, we're doing more with Zoom. And so there are many days, not all of them, but many, when we max that out. And Lumen will give us a little bit past that, but not a lot past that. And so when that happens, everybody slows down. And sometimes we have emergency days where we had to just block YouTube entirely district-wide, just so we could do payroll. So what we've been working on is trying to fix that. So we've been gradually removing the barriers that we have to increasing connectivity in the district. Because we can only go to 1 gig based on the equipment we had. So first we replaced our firewall. It was an aging device. It was no longer supported. When we called the vendor, they would be surprised that we still had it. So we replaced it with something state-of-the-art and brand new that allows us to go above that 1 gig threshold if we have the bandwidth. We have also ordered and received in the last several weeks a new switch for our central network facility over by Florida 501 that we're going to be putting in place. It is also not end of life like the one currently there. We have also replaced many of the wireless access points around the district with new ones. And all told, those projects will give some increased infrastructure once we have the extra bandwidth in place. Those were also paid for, by the way, in part by the district, but up to 85% of that was paid for with E-rate dollars. We found that we were able to use those dollars for a lot of those projects, which saved a lot. To give you an idea of how much, the wireless project every 3 years of replacing access points is something we have to pay anyway every 3 years, and it costs the district about $90,000 every 3 years. We're able to knock off about 80% of that with E-rate. So that gets us to the point where if we have faster speed, we can now do something with it, but we don't have faster speed yet. We are currently working with Lumen to double our current connectivity. The reason we're doubling it is because, first of all, the firewall can absorb that. Secondly, our E-rate application from last year limits us to that amount unless we want to sacrifice our E-rate dollars in order to get them. That's been a slow-going project, but we're making some progress. We've been working with CenturyLink, and I'll be meeting with them shortly, I think maybe even tomorrow, to have that final conversation of when can we get this turned up. And at that point, we'll double the available connectivity that the district has, which I think will absorb a lot of our current stress. Then again, we're going to double it in July again. So by fall, we should have gone from 1 gig where we are now to 4 gigs district-wide, which is the capacity for the firewall we have. I think that's something that's not only going to absorb everything that we've got going on inside the buildings, it will also be future-looking, so for the next several years will be squared away. And third, it will position us to do some pretty cool things outside the buildings, which is the third topic. When it comes to outside the buildings, things are not great. The state of New Mexico has done some analysis that found that between 18 and 20% of people in New Mexico are considered to be underserved or unserved when it comes to internet. That means that they do not have at least 25 megs down, 10 megs up, or anything for that matter, enough to do education. Those numbers estimate that it's 7,000 people, 7,000 families in Luna County that just don't have good connectivity. And that fits with what we're feeling when we're talking to families. We find that there's a lot of people that the school district serves that just don't have that connectivity at home. Even a company like Lumen, like CenturyLink, only provides for about 88% of the district to get that kind of connectivity. And when they do, it might be connectivity, for example, in Columbus that costs $90 a month and still doesn't get you great speeds. So that's not really acceptable. Even if families can apply for discounts, which they can, it will only knock about $50 off that, which still is $40 a month to get some kind of connectivity. So we've been trying to find things that we can do. The first thing is having as many conversations as possible with Santa Fe to explain to them that we're having some challenges here and we could use some assistance. And that has had some members of PED come down and do walkthroughs with me, looking at our buildings, going to Columbus, looking at buildings there, and even crossing the border to Palomas to take a look at where things might get posted that we can expand connectivity. That also means anything that the board can do to have conversations with Santa Fe or Superintendent Chavez will be helpful as well, because some of this expansion that we're going to need may not necessarily be on the school district, it may be on cities, counties, and so forth. But there are some projects that we're trying to do as a school district. One of them that we tried early on was not particularly successful, and that was to expand connectivity in our parking lots. We have extra antennas on our roofs. They did not provide the kind of connectivity we were hoping for. So we've been working on dialing those in a little bit better to the parking lot space, expanding the coverage that they provide, and then maybe doing some cool things with them. Like right now, some of them have been moved from where they were not working to our sports areas, to the football field, soccer field, and they're providing wireless connectivity there so people can get online if they want to. That is in conjunction with also trying to improve what's aimed at the parking lots. And that's something, it's not a lot, but it's something. The bigger project is we are finalizing, and we're waiting now to just find out if we're getting it, a private LTE project. What that means is cell phone service that is provided by the district for broadband, not for phone calls, but for broadband. So that then we can take a district device on a specific band, so not my phone, but a district device, and give it to a student or family, and they can take it home and use our network anywhere that signal reaches. We have a bid in place. We have a request for E-rate dollars for a little over $500,000 to fund the project. And if that works, it would cover great chunks of Columbus and great chunks of Deming and give us some capacity to expand that further into the surrounding area. That's some pretty high hopes for the project. Right now, I'm waiting to see if the E-rate program will fund it. If that happens, as I said, that extra bandwidth that we are putting in place this month and then again in post-July will be used by that because they'll be on our network. The benefit there is that we won't be having to pay anything extra. It'll be our network that we already have in place, and that's also our filtering that we already have in place, and they'll be brought into our school network. This is also an exciting project because not a lot of school districts have done this. A few have. The first one was in Utah. One of the next few is up in Rio Rancho. And it stretches the E-rate program a little bit past what it was originally intended to do. Because prior FCC administration was pretty firm on the campus ends where the walls of the school end. We have a little more flexibility now, and we're pushing that about as far as we can, maybe further, to try to expand our connectivity in the district. That's something that I'm thinking we'll be hearing back from, yes or no on that funding sometime in the next month or so, then we'll know. But either way, I think it's something that this board and this district should look at. With that, that covers our physical computers, it covers connectivity in the buildings, and it covers what we are hoping to do outside. I will stand for any questions.
I've got a question. So I think there are parents, because we've been watching the news about cyber attacks. And so I think maybe some of the parents are kind of wondering how, if this expansion like you're talking about, having more connectivity and everywhere, is that gonna make it a little bit more vulnerable to cyber attacks, or it's not even associated?
That's a very good question. I'm not going to say that it's not even associated, but I will say that the risk is small.
Okay.
That's for a couple of reasons. The first reason is we can control to a fairly good level what we can grant access to on our guest networks. And that's what we will be doing with this sort of thing. The second is that this district has intentionally, via our IT services, adopted a posture that reduces as much as possible our vulnerability to ransomware. The things that we've seen happen in some other school districts in the state, those types of ransomware attacks couldn't happen here. Our exposure is much more reduced, which is not to say we could not be ransomed, but we would not be disabled as badly as some of the other school districts have. The reason for that is that we take as many of our applications as possible, we put them in the cloud. That means things like Infinite Campus, Infinite Visions, and so forth are not sitting on servers on our own premises. If we did have a ransomware attack and we suddenly lost our main servers in this district, you can still just get on your own phone and go online and start doing some work by getting to the servers that way. And we inside the district could spin things up pretty quickly, restoring from backup and so forth.
Well, thank you. I think that kind of clears it up a little bit, because I'm sure that was a question that a lot of people might be thinking about right now.
I appreciate that. It's a very good question. There's not a lot that keeps people like me up at night, but ransomware is one of them, because you can reduce your exposure, but it's never zero. And it's something that there are very few true experts on cybersecurity across the country, and it's something that a lot of IT individuals have had to come up to speed on very quickly, especially over the last couple of years.
Thank you.
So my question is really about something we had done last year. Is the antenna that we put up at the Columbus Library, I think, did that work? Or was that one of the ones that didn't work?
That's also a good question. That was something that we looked at putting up, but has not been placed yet.
Oh, okay.
The
Okay.
intention there will be that antenna, when it's there, could point to an additional antenna at the old school in Columbus and then build a network out from there. That's something that will be done if we're able to get this private LTE project going. And if we had had some more success with our parking lot Wi-Fi, we would have moved along a little faster. It just wasn't working out particularly well, so we decided to
Okay.
change tacks.
Okay, thanks.
have one more question. You talked about doubling the gigs. So I'm not a real computer, literate person. So anyway, is there a cost associated with the doubling of the gigs and then doubling again?
Yes.
Okay.
So we pay for our internet to Lumen. In previous years, that cost a little over $4,000 a month for the district. Of that 4,000, approximately 87% of it was paid for by the E-rate program. So we had to pick up the rest of that. So you can see that that ultimately would cost the district around, $450 a month for our internet bill for that. We upgraded with Lumen in the last year and a half. We went from our smaller speed to our higher speed, which is the current 1 gig we're sitting at, and our costs also dropped. We dropped it from $4,000 to $1,000. And again, we are on the hook for a little over 10% of that. So we're now paying about $100 a month for our internet, which is sort of laughably small, right? It's not a lot of money. And then secondly, we have in our contract the ability to upgrade our speed for the district. That upgrade is now possible because of the infrastructure we have in place. That's why we didn't go to it earlier, but it is possible now. And those costs in the current bids that we're getting from vendors, because we are currently in an E-rate season and we're receiving bids, which I can't speak to right now because we're still receiving them, but those costs are still coming in lower or very close to what we're currently paying for that increased speed already. So in other words, we're getting more speed for fewer dollars.
Well, that sounds great.
Even if we go to 4 gigs, it will be less than we were paying 2 years ago for 1.
Wow.
That's amazing.
That's good.
Well, thank you and your team for all that y'all have done, because I know during the pandemic, I mean, we had to have your department. We relied on y'all a lot and really appreciate everything you've done.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I really do.
Thank you for that. And I'll tell one more story because it's a fun one. I may have told this before. So when I spoke about hotspots, that was also a bit of a project because we received, oh my goodness, it was a little under 3,000 of them that we had for the district. Those are just the Verizon ones. We also had 300 T-Mobile hotspots that were free, but they weren't very good. They didn't provide a lot of connectivity. They're good hotspots, but the speed was slow. And more than that, T-Mobile doesn't work in a lot of places in Luna County. I know because I have it on my phone. So we primarily were handing out the Verizon hotspots, and then the T-Mobile ones if we were just trying something, just like if we just had to just take a Hail Mary to see if somebody could get online. The hotspots we initially got, we were the first in the country to have this happen, had a problem with exploding. And so after we went through this whole process of having to find out a way to get them to people in a safe way, via first the equity department, via the first couple hundred that we picked up, and then at every other school site. This was, you may remember, when we first started having people quasi back in the district, and we were starting to get staff members getting COVID and having those scares where we had to suddenly back off and change our tax. So it was a bit of a struggle to deploy them, but the team got through it with help from all the schools and from equity. But then we found out that one of our students reported that they had dropped their hotspot and it just exploded. And when we contacted Verizon, they said, no, that doesn't happen. That's not possible. And we said, no, they reported that it popped. It was hot when they picked it up and they dropped it and it just popped and flew across the room. So they started looking into it. And 2 weeks later, they called me back and said, we're really sorry, it is possible. We've had now other school districts have reported the same problem and they issued a full recall of the devices.
Wow.
So not only did we have to receive them all, unbox them all, power them all online and load them into our mobile device management system, we then had to take them all back, rebox them back up, and then get all these new ones, which are, by the way, much better, and make them available. They're available now. We still have that stockpile of just shy of 3,000 Verizon hotspots, but most of them the district is no longer paying for on a monthly basis because we turned them off. And we've only turned on hotspots as they've been requested. And I said at the last meeting that was 266, I think. Since then, we've had just under another 10 that have been requested by school sites that have been turned on. I'm anticipating more. And what I'm letting the schools know is that just let us know. We can move very quickly on that. The ability to activate them can take as little as 15 minutes and as much as a few hours if Verizon is slower that day, but it can be done nimbly. But yes, we are the first school district in the country to say, hey, by the way students are using these when they're just sort of leaving them all the time or putting them on their beds with laptops on top of them or putting them up in the sun, they pop.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's quite a story.
Nobody was hurt. That's right.
Yes, very good.
Are there any more questions? Thank you, Mr. Glickler. Appreciate you. That was very thorough.
Very good.
So Our next report, I wanted to just follow up from the school calendar that you all approved last month when we allowed for the additional planning days. And I've asked the high school in Red Mountain. The other thing that we did, that we announced last at the last board meeting, is that when students came back, we in January, there were advising days that we offered for smaller groups so that they could build contracts and make sure they were on track. And so I've asked them to come and just share briefly what you guys did, the successes and the things that you've learned from it. So Ms. Padron, you can go first, since you're closer to the front row.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Chavez, well, first, thank you for allowing us to have those academic days. It was, I think it was an eye opener, not only for the teachers, but also for our students and our parents. So what we did is we brought in, every day we brought in different groups, age groups or grades. We brought in 12 and 11, then we brought in 10 and then 9th grade. And we brought in 9th and 10th by themselves because they are our bigger groups. So what teachers did is they sat with every child and they talked about their grades. So they brought in every child individually, they brought them up and said, let's talk about how you're doing in your class, in my class, and then they set goals, whether they were failing or not. But the students who were failing, they put them on academic learning contracts. And these contracts, students were able to kind of reflect on what they were doing in their class, kind of set goals of what their responsibilities are going to be to raise their grade, and then what resources do they need? So what can the teacher do to support them in this area? But also, there's also a section for social and emotional learning. Sometimes we get caught up in the day-to-day teaching that we don't realize that maybe this child is going through something else at home that they're not telling us. So this is a time for them to say, do I need to know something? Is there something else that I need to know about you to help you and support you with your academics? So there's a section for that. And then what the teachers are going to do is, once they set this plan, every time we have that planning day that you guys also allowed us to, those extra days, the teachers are going to go back, look at the contract, check to see the grade. Is this child growing? Is this child showing academic progress? Then they're going to call every parent, and say, this is what's happening. Are they showing growth or are not? Then they're going to record it, and then they're going to continue to support and help the child as they go. So hopefully we will see an improvement and they will be passing their classes. So, and I know Mr. Apalaca has some numbers he would like to share because he is my numbers person.
So, Madam President, members of the board. So the numbers, I know it's a small time frame. It's really 2 weeks since we did this. But remember, we stood up here and told you we really need to have that sense of urgency for our seniors. Because if we don't get them what they need to be in 17 weeks, and now it's down to 15 weeks, they're not going to graduate. So we had 123 seniors who, at the time, were failing at least one class, who were in danger of not graduating. 33 of those seniors now are passing all their classes. So if you extrapolate and look into the future, that number 33 will mean that come that May graduation, that every senior that had their credits and does not fail any classes this year will actually graduate. And so that was our sense of urgency. Our juniors decreased from 204 who were to 194, sophomores 222 to 208, and freshmen 262 to 255. We realized the total number, 6.6% of the students that were failing, but it's only a 2-week time frame. And it's kind of served twofold. It not only is addressing those students that need to not fail their classes, but the amount of parent contact that we were able to have. And at the high school, that's difficult. And we were able to contact 249 parents because of these academic planning days. So it was vital. It served its purpose. We're not anywhere close. I think, like Ben said, you know, where we're at now and where we're going to be in 15 weeks is a totally different place. So.
And so one of the things that we did do is, so if a child had a 40 to 59, which is still an F, the teacher had to work with that child. So they had to do a project, a standard-based project, and say, look, you failed last semester, but we're gonna create a project for you that's gonna show if you understand the standards that you had to learn. If you can do this project and demonstrate that you understand the standards, we're gonna pass you to a D. That way, this semester, you have an opportunity to pass.
Mhm.
So then this semester, they get that opportunity to pick up their grades and pass the whole year. But if we have a child that has a below 40, that's a little bit more difficult to catch up. So what we did is we put them in on Edgenuity. So, but we focused on math and language arts. So now that the students have an opportunity to redo last semester. So they're going to do last semester on Edgenuity, and then this semester, they still have to pass the class in order to pass the whole year.
Yeah.
So this way, the students who don't have the lower 40, they'll say, then why am I going to put forth effort next semester if I can't pass this class anymore? They have an opportunity to pass because we're giving them we're putting them on Ingenuity so they can do last semester. So if they pass, let's say they're failing more than 1 or 2 classes, but if they pass math and language arts in Ingenuity last semester, we can give them more credits in Ingenuity if they need to this semester. And then, of course, there'll be summer school, and then next semester after summer. But we're working really hard, our teachers are working really hard, contacting parents, having those conversations with students. And like I said, it was really, really good. I think the only thing that, if I have to say, that maybe we can do better is maybe advertising, because I feel that sometimes parents don't understand the importance of having students in school those days. Or it's just, the
Yes.
ninth graders just have to be there, so my child doesn't have to go. No, they need to be in school. They need to be there so that we can have those conversations. Now, teachers
Yeah.
continue to have conversations even after that day. I had a teacher call me and says, I have a parent very upset. He doesn't want her child on a contract because he's failing. She's very upset. I said, I'm sorry, the child will be on a contract, but they're still working on contacting parents, making sure that every child has a contract if they need a contract.
And so I'm just a little confused. Does every student have a contract in every single class? So they have like 7
Well,
contracts?
if they're failing in seven,
Oh, just if you're
Just if they're
failing.
failing.
Oh, okay,
Failing.
okay.
now they met with every child. So they,
Okay.
so whether you were passing or not, they had that conversation. Look,
Okay.
you're passing, so what are you gonna do now? So you have a. seat.
Okay,
What do you
great.
need to do?
Contract is
But they were not put
Yeah.
on contracts. But if
Okay,
they're failing, they were put on a contract. So now you can't have a child that has 7 contracts. You can have one that has 3, that has 2. But that
Okay.
means that the teacher's gonna be revisiting that contract every, 5 weeks? To
yeah,
make sure that, is the child, meeting their goals? If not, what do I need to do? Do I need to bring them in? Do I need to bring in counselors? Do I need to bring in administrators? So it's a constant revisiting of the contract. It's a live document.
okay. And I really appreciate that y'all had a conversation with every single student. That's,
Yeah, we
Amazing.
did. They sat down with every single child and had that
Yeah.
conversation.
that's wonderful.
I have a quick. So when it comes to the contracts, how successful were you involving the parents with the whole contract idea?
Well, it depends. Like some parents are very involved and other parents we still, to this day, we can't even get a hold of.
Right.
So it's gonna depend on the child and the family if we can get, but the teachers are documenting. So in Infinite Campus, if we don't get a hold of them, because sometimes we will call every number.
Right.
And those numbers are not, that we no longer get a hold of them. Now, here comes parent-teacher conference.
Mhm.
So the next planning session, what I'm gonna ask, and my teachers don't know this, so they're listening right now, so they don't know this. But what I'm gonna ask of
They get a
them is
preview.
that they contact every single failing student and try to make an appointment. So to ensure that those parents come to those Zoom meetings and really have that conversation with the teachers. Make it a point to make sure that they can reach those parents.
Thank you.
And the contracts were in both Spanish and English,
Yes.
so we were
Oh,
able to
good.
address a bigger portion of the population because a lot of those parents appreciated that el contrato académico de them in high school was sent out.
And
That's great.
I think, and Mr. Palacios is a storyteller, so tell them about that student that, so the parent was like, tell them, the student didn't want to.
Well, and remember I shared with you guys, or I think Charity shared with you that I called 11 students as I was going through that video report. So one of the students, district employee, he said, I didn't realize that my daughter was struggling. So he brought her in and very quiet, very diminished. She's not an attendance issue. She's not a behavior issue. She's in class every day, doesn't say a word. And so they brought her in and she was failing 5 classes. And they brought her in and she was now failing 1 class. And so the mom, dile, Mr. Plata, lo que nos estás diciendo, the little girl didn't want to say anything. And she goes, I just told them, I'm glad you guys did this because somebody cares beyond my parents. And I was like,
Yeah.
that's just, you know, right down the floor because
Yeah.
I think it is.
But we just
Yeah.
want to say thank you for allowing us, and thank you, Superintendent Travis, for allowing us to have this time. We need this time. We need this time to be able to have those one-on-one conversations, to really dig deep into what's happening with our kids. Like I said, not just academically, but is there something happening in the home that we need to know about as well?
Yeah.
So
Great.
we appreciate it.
Thank you, Mrs. Patron and Mr. Apodaca. And then from the 7th and 8th grade school, Mr. Sines.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Travis. Yes, the academic advisory days were excellent for us in this sense. We brought in our 7th graders all by themselves. And so the first thing they asked, well, why are we the only ones here? So we kind of talked to them to let them know that we're going to be looking at preparing them for high school. And we're going to start out with writing some goals and talking a little bit more about what we can do as individual students at Red Mountain to get better socially, academically, and just prepare ourselves for 8th grade, 7th to 8th, and then 8th grade to 9th grade. Well, the 7th grade, I think really took it serious because as they went through and we're talking to them between classes, they're like, man, that really did this. Just, I don't think teachers have that time always to talk to us about what the preparation is to get to high school and finish our credits, and then to start to get ready for college as well. And it was great because in just 3 classes, I've already learned what I need to do to get ready to get a scholarship if that's what I need, or what it's going to be like in college. And I don't think teachers did that. So it was good to hear the kids as they were going through. So in all of our 6 periods in every class, all teachers created some or worked with the kids to create goals, academic goals, an emotional or social emotional goal. Just a goal that kind of is like organization, because the kids just lose dates and you don't know when to turn things in. And like the teachers say, they're not dumb, they're smart kiddos, just don't turn in their work. And when they don't turn it in and they see a 0 there, they're just kind of like, oh, I'll just take that because it's a lot easier. Well, the teachers talk to them about how important it is to have a good grade in there. And at the end of the day, as they're leaving again, we're talking to some of the kids and they just said, I hope we can continue this every grading period, because I think it was good for us to talk about how important grades are. Of course, our kids that are excelling are like, that was great. We need more of this. So come the next day, our 8th graders come in, a little bit different. We opened it up with having Mr. Brian Simpson come over from early college, and he brought some of his students to kind of talk to the kids about, what it would be like an experience at early college. And by the time their goals were done, a lot of teachers were saying their goals are to get good grades starting from right now, and hopefully be able to put in a good application, be accepted to early college, if not, to get ready to go to high school, and then hopefully get ready for 9th grade. And same thing, teachers just talked about the exploration of what they want to do in their careers and get ready for that. I think the overall planning days, the virtual Wednesdays, and then those 2 days were excellent in this sense that teachers were, when we started in August, teachers were just rushed and kind of forgot how to do business. So in our first in-service, we talked about, making sure that we have minimum of 2 grades posted, and we're checking on those every Wednesday to make sure that every teacher has grades already posted so that kids know where they're at. So now we ask kids, today I did what we call an audit, and I called in several kids out of some of our core classes, and I told them to bring their goals, and I just listened to them. Tell me about your goals. Tell me what you want to do with this semester. And you could see that the light kind of turned on in all of the ones that I talked to. I mean, I talked to kids that had good grades that said, I got to go from an A to an A plus. And that's important. I got kids that were at a D and now want to get Bs and then hopefully raise it to. And a lot of it was just organization. They just went out, they've already asked their parents for an organizer to kind of write in their due dates and stuff like that. And then we talked a little bit about their careers. And so I had a lot of kids that said, is it possible for us to have a career day sometime in April or something? So we're going to open that up and explore that. And as we continue to talk to these kids to see that we can provide those opportunities for them to get ready. But going back to our teachers, what we're asking them to do is we want the lesson plans every Wednesday. And we want to look to see that the interventions are there for those kids that are failing. And then as we do our walkthroughs and our pop-ins, that we see those things happening as well. I just think that it has those planning days and those advisory days have kind of rejuvenated our teachers to say, how we got some time that I could start building on something. And that was a start. A lot of our IEPs were taking a lot longer because teachers weren't getting their progress notes or notes to their case managers. That Wednesday has now allowed that. We've got more phone calls getting home in these last, yesterday we had more phone calls going out. The first one, of course, it was where we were at, but definitely they're calling home and reaching out to parents. So I just think that we're going to continue to build on that. And again, I just want to say thank you to the board and Superintendent Chavez for fighting for those days. Any questions?
I have a question, Mr. Sine. So I also have heard from teachers that the Wednesday thing was like just really kind of miracle for some of them. But then recently I heard that they're having to, and I'm not sure it's at your school, so I'm not sure whose school, but that on Wednesdays they're having to do trainings instead of prep sometimes because there's too many people out the other days when they're supposed to do the training, and so then it gets put on Wednesday. I'm just wondering if y'all are seeing that or if that is a problem.
We had a training yesterday that was something that we just wanted to level up our new teachers for capturing kids' hearts. So they had 2 Wednesdays where they had to go ahead and get training there.
Okay.
We had a day out on Tuesday, but we're gonna do some PLCs. And rather than go ahead and have teachers not help us with covering classes, we canceled it, and then we just kind of met for real quick right after lunch and did that. But we haven't had any trainings other than the one we did yesterday. So maybe that's what they were referring to.
Okay. And are you having that problem, Ms. Padron?
So we haven't put any professional development on Wednesdays, but capturing kids' hearts, that was something that was already contracted before.
Oh,
And
okay.
it had to happen, and it was
Okay.
only for brand new teachers who had never had capturing kids' hearts training before.
Oh,
So we
okay.
had maybe about 8.
Oh,
So it
yeah.
was 2 Wednesdays, but that's it. But we have not, we have allowed them to have the planning time.
Okay.
And so no, we haven't had any. professional
Yeah, maybe they didn't
Actually,
understand.
Madam President, if I can add, she said I'm in story mode, so. We did have that on Wednesday, but today we're walking down the Mac hallway and it's 2:45, 2:50. And we look in that first room, teacher's not in there. We look in the second room, teacher's not in there. we look at the third group teacher, and I'm like, oh, my math teachers were here. I hope they didn't go over 45 to 50. And so we get to the last room, and Ms. Padron says, hey, they're having a content meeting. I said,
They were all social distance, but they were together.
They were
working
talking.
together.
That's
So
good.
it was good.
Yeah. And how is the covering preps going? I
Did you hear
know,
that sigh?
I know. I was scared to ask also, but
So it has been a struggle. It has been a struggle these past few, this past week and these past 2 days, our numbers have been high. And
Yeah.
even with our staff. So our staff is getting sick. We do have a lot of staff out. So it has been difficult to cover with prep as well. So
Yeah.
we're doing the best we can to cover classes and get subs and because our staff is getting sick as well.
and I think that's where our teachers have really, I mean, I know our departments have gone to our secretary and said, look, these are the days that these teachers can cover on these days when they don't have their content period meetings, they can cover during the prep. So they've been willing, the ones that are there have been willing to step up and create their own schedule as to when they can cover. So I got to credit the teachers for that.
They have, they say these are the, the prep that can cover, use me, and so our teachers are great.
wow.
Not there. Living high school teachers are amazing. They're willing. And once again, yesterday, 2:45, we have another change. And they're like, okay, let's do this. What do we need to do? So just a big shout out to all staff at Living High School.
Yeah.
They're just willing to change at the drop of a phone.
Same as Red Mountain, the teachers are, they come in, they're like, go ahead and get my roster right now, so they're ready for them. They cover them and do a good job. So again, mighty Wildcats.
Yeah.
We love them.
For sure.
Yeah, no, that's great. Do you have any other questions?
Oh, I think you helped us.
I
No, I
asked them all.
don't mean that. I meant that as positive.
I just got a comment, not a
Yeah,
question. But when you talked about the career day, Mr. Science, I think we're a group that always thinks out of the box. And so as far as like, we have very different careers on the board. So we've got like business owner, we've got an attorney, a social worker, we've got teachers. And so with me, at some point, I know that right now it's not really possible, but at some point, I think it would be really great to get us involved or other people in the community who have careers to come down and talk to the kids and give them an idea firsthand what the careers are, especially teaching right now. I know there's a lot of kids that if they heard more from teachers, retired teachers, they would be a little bit more interested in that career, so.
Yeah, and I know that when I first started and we were at Hope Packet, we had a big career day every year.
Uh-huh.
And we would reach out to
To
the
everyone.
outside of Cleveland County, cruises and everywhere else. And then when we were at Red Mountain, we were also doing it, but we haven't done it because of the gathering. But I will say this, that out of the 15 ladies and gentlemen that I talked to today in my office, 4 of them want to be teachers.
There you
So I'm
go.
like,
Oh,
yeah,
good.
That's why I like this. Keep going. And when you
Yeah.
hire, you definitely.
That's right.
Right.
We want you guys to come back. So again, thank you guys for those
Perfect.
things, and we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I just want to add a comment. I started this growing champions thing, and I believe with all my being that when kids are involved, they know where they stand, they know what their expectations are, they have a path, they have people who care about them. I believe they will become advocates for themselves, because to me, that's what growing is. It's about resilience and perseverance and always learning and moving forward. And so I just appreciate the work that our schools have done to support our kids in taking ownership of their lives. And I just love that advocacy that they're learning. And I hope we can push it down to our elementary, because there's nothing like a kindergartner telling you, this is where I'm at, this is what I'm reading, and guess what I'm going to do when I grow up. It is the
right.
most amazing experience to have our kids be feel and be in control of who they are and where they're going with their education. So I'm excited. So
One
thank
thing,
you.
if I can say something.
Sure.
One thing that I just heard tonight is that, you know, how much time that you put in to make sure that we're still doing the work we're supposed to do, rather than making excuses for the situation that we're in.
Mhm.
And maybe
That's
in
right.
some way, we're taking that horrible thing that's going around in the air and harming so many people, making that for an opportunity for our students to know that there is a future, and you're providing a lot of information and letting them question so that it's not an end. Because I think as a child, I might think everyone's dying, everyone's this, there's nothing left. But so I'm just really almost crying here listening to your to what you're doing and how and how you're interacting with their students. So thank you.
Thank you.
So on that note, I would like to give you some health updates with the district.
There you go.
So here we go. You know, I think, and Mrs. Cameron, I think you bring up a really good point, and I kind of have been on a soapbox lately with anybody who'll listen to me. And Mr. Glickler, I'm sorry you had to listen to me earlier on my soapbox. We've been in this pandemic for 2 years, and we keep thinking it's going to go away, and we keep thinking things are going to change. Well, maybe next month it'll be different. Well, maybe March it'll be different. And it's not. So we have to set aside the fact that we're in this pandemic, and yes, we have to address needs, immediate needs, respond to things, but then we have to keep our eye on what needs to really happen, and how do we help our kids advocate for themselves? How do we keep growing forward and supporting our kids in learning, and what are those holes we need to fill? Because we can't use the pandemic as an excuse to lose a generation of students. You know, they are important to us, and we want them to have that attitude that, yes, I'm in this situation, but tomorrow I can do this, or today I can do this to alleviate that. So we just really want to support that attitude of problem solving, resiliency, and growth. So, but we do have realities around us, around our numbers. As you've seen, and as I've kept you informed, our rates have been increasing pretty steadily. We're still not near as high as our community is, but it is still a concern. And the ability to cover classrooms has become impossible at the high school, honestly, with the number of staff who are also sick. And they're just valid reasons why staff are not able to come to work. And we have had up to 300 kids in the gym this week. And when I heard that, I was like, we have to do something else. We can't keep that going. And as you know, we moved into a remote setting for this today and tomorrow at the high school and Members Valley. And starting on Monday, we're going to do a remote hybrid cohort. So let me explain how that would, and I think I sort of explained it, but I want the public to hear it. And then the PSA, the public service announcement, will be going out. So because we are not able to cover all the classrooms, and it's become a dangerous situation for our students, we are moving to a hybrid cohort schedule where on Mondays and Tuesdays, only 9th grade and 11th grade students will have in-person learning. 10th and 12th grade will continue asynchronous work via Canvas. They'll continue to be able to access their lessons, any software that they need. If they're on Edgenuity, they'll be able to do all of that in a remote setting. They will have to be in a remote setting. And then on Wednesdays, we will continue the remote Wednesdays as we've been doing them. And then on Thursdays and Fridays, our 10th and 12th graders will come in person for direct instruction. And our 9th and 11th grade students will work asynchronously remotely. It is not the ideal situation for us, but because of the number of staff that we're down, and the rotation of when they can come back, and if they feel good and don't have symptoms, we are in a kind of a crisis, but we're again continue to stay committed to that in-person learning as much as we possibly can, and looking at one school as opposed to doing some type of a blanket across the district. as other districts have done, and I've been asked, there's been people who have said, why don't you just do a whole reset for the district and shut us down? Because our other schools need to be in person. Our kids need to be in person as much as possible. And so we're trying as much as possible to be differentiated based on the school needs and what's happening there. So this is not the ideal, and I want to be clear, I don't think anybody feels it is the ideal situation, but we have to reduce the number of students that are showing up to our buildings so we can adequately cover them, and make sure that they get a qualified person in their classroom. So I don't know if there's anything you guys want to add to that. We spent time yesterday talking through it.
Well, also, it's not just that, our student numbers with COVID has also gone up.
Yes.
So now we have to kind of separate them so that they're not all together. So this will give us the opportunity to have 2 lunches with just 1 grade. So we'll be able to socially distance them a little bit better than if we have everybody there. Because our numbers are high right now with our student population as well.
Yeah, and putting 300 kids in the gym doesn't help
Yeah.
COVID, yeah.
No, it doesn't help COVID, right?
But to contact trace, to do all of that, it's been a nightmare these past 4 or 5 days. So this is really going to help with that as well.
So Mrs. Padron, are the students checked every day as they come into school?
We have 1,300 students.
I know.
They come in from the bus, they come in from the
Yeah.
parking lot. There's no way we have the manpower to do that.
Oh, I agree. I just was wondering. It just,
No, there's no way. So now with this test to stay, which is nice, if they do have symptoms, we test them right there. And we can test them, send them home if they need to. So that kind of helped us with not having to take a temperature. Any signs or symptoms, we isolate them, we test them. If they're positive, we send them home. If not, we send them back.
thank you.
But my understanding was that we aren't going to have access to those tests much longer, is that right?
So the inventory of tests are diminishing quickly. I did get some numbers from Ms. Schrader, our health coordinator, and she said we are administering approximately 50 to 75 tests a day, either through test to stay or surveillance. And we are low. We only have about 200 tests district-wide right now. In our superintendent meeting this morning with the secretary, they did announce that there are 1 million tests coming into New Mexico that should be here. And Ms. Schrader was expecting our shipment to, if it's not here tomorrow on Friday, it should be here Monday.
Okay.
From that million that's coming into New Mexico.
Okay,
And
good.
so I think we're gonna squeak by.
Yes.
And again, going remote these 2 days and reducing the number of students on campus has alleviated some of that for these 2 days and
Right.
kept us okay at our elementary sites and our other schools to be able to continue. The other thing that's changed, there's 2 other things I want to highlight that have changed. On this test to stay, in the past, and this has been up until literally Tuesday, our students who were considered close, or students or staff considered close contacts, tested on day 1. Then we had to say, okay, this group tests on this day, and then they have to test again on day 3. And then it's like, okay, now I have a new group that I have to do day 1 with. And now I have a day 5 group. And so it was a very heavy burden for administratively to manage. Our PED has, and DOH have allowed us now, we're going to be able to test 3 days a week. And you just catch all your test to stay people on those 3 days. And so early elementary schools and early college, high school will test on Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays. And our schools that do remote Wednesdays will be Monday, Tuesday, Fridays. So that will help us a lot with the test to stay program. And the other thing that's changed, just so you guys know, there was a requirement that the booster, and again, this just changed, I think Tuesday also, or it might have been yesterday. I don't know. I feel like I'm getting new emails every day.
Right.
But the booster requirement was supposed to be done by January 17th, or you became part of the surveillance if you were eligible. That's been moved to February 4th. And so anybody who's eligible for the booster, they have to do so by February 4th, or they'll become part of our weekly surveillance program. So those are the big updates on the health and some things happening within the district. And I'm happy to answer any questions or anything that might be offered. If there's anything you all have that you'd like to know that we maybe didn't cover.
I got a quick question.
Sure.
How long do you think we'll be doing this thing at the high school?
Okay, so what we're.
Idea, that's all.
Yeah,
I'm
so
not-
we're going with 3 weeks, and this PSA says that the schedule will be followed through February 11th. And that was at the request of allowing teachers to have not changing week to week, because they're planning for it and they're
Mhm.
preparing for it. So February 11th, we did 3 weeks. We'll reassess it. And if the rates drop or start to steady off, which every expert is predicting in the next 3 weeks, New Mexico itself will start to wane a little bit. We'll start to see some relief. So we're planning to reopen on February 14th, unless our rates continue to be out of control.
Yeah.
We said Valentine's Day.
Valentine's Day, just in time for Love Day.
Yeah,
I know.
it's,
Good luck with that.
So I know Superintendent Chavez, I keep bringing this up, but with the prep period, are we keeping track of which teachers are covering and how many days they're covering? And I guess what I'm asking, is there any money to be paying people for their prep?
There could be, but you need to understand, we've also given them Wednesday afternoons
yeah.
as a
True.
planning
That's
time.
true.
And so the give on that was, we're going to give you Wednesday afternoons uninterrupted, and we may need to
Okay.
use you Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday.
Okay,
So that's been a switch.
Okay.
Now, last semester, there may have been some times when we had some preps covered, and that would take a little time for us we were just trying to be in survival mode. And I think we were trying to learn how to do this, and not that we figured it out, but came up with the solution of the Wednesdays. And so it could be from last semester that we have some people that gave up their preps to cover classes,
yeah,
and they weren't compensated at that time.
yeah, okay. No, that makes sense, that now they have the Wednesday. Yeah.
And I would want the administration to give me feedback. If we're coming to a place where we're not able to even give them the afternoons on Wednesdays, or something were to happen that we're not able to do that, then I definitely want to make sure we fix that and figure out a solution.
So with this hybrid that we're going to, so our teachers who teach 10th and 12th, and our 9th and 11th graders are there, and we have teachers who miss, they're going to cover for those teachers. So now we'll have a certified teacher in those classrooms instead of having them in the gym, and the teachers know that, and they know that they're going to cover for their peers. And we're going to keep a record so that it's not always the same person covering, and we'll be equal or equitable to all.
Okay, that makes sense, yes. Okay.
We're trying. We're not perfect by any means, and we do not want to abuse teachers and keep them from getting their preps. I mean, that is not our intention at all. So we just need to hear if it's not working.
Yeah.
So with that, that's all the great news I have tonight. It's been a whirlwind. I do want to just say we do have an amazing team of people that have jumped in, given ideas, pushed back on, when we get ready to send a PSA, we try and send it out to people to get feedback. And we've got people from all different types of backgrounds giving us feedback, making sure that we're thinking through it too, before we just jump. And so we have an amazing team of people, and we have great staff. We have great staff.
Definitely do. Anybody have any other questions, comments, subjects? Okay, So are there any requests for agenda items for next month? And if you don't have any, you can always email or call. And we have our conference in 2 weeks, right, in Santa
That's
Fe.
right. So before we leave tonight, if you'll get with us to tell us what days you'll be there and make sure that we cover the announcement for potential
Yes.
quorum and make sure we have your rooms.
Yes. And then the next regular meeting will be February 17th at 6 p.m. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Also move that we adjourn.
I'll second that.
Okay, you want to do the roll call, Dan?
Yes, ma'am. Mrs. Baez,
Yes.
Mrs. Cameron,
Yes.
Mr. Orozco,
Yes.
Mrs. Hernandez,
Yes.
and Mr. Crowe, yes. Thank you, guys.
Okay,
Thank
we'll
you,
be
everybody.
adjourned.
Thank you.